Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCGplayer affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. So, on today's episode, I've got an incredibly budget deck tech for you with a very powerful commander. So with all that said, let's jump into it. So the ground rules for my deck techs are as follows. The budget is $50 or less, and that's an overall deck cost. So that cost includes shipping as well as commanders as long as they're $10 or less, but basic lands will not be included in that price. On my deck techs, I'm going to take you through the strategy, the tactics, and how the deck wins. So today's episode comes to you courtesy of Wade Calvert, a general tier patron who's been supporting this channel for over a year now. I truly couldn't do this without the support from amazing patrons like Wade. And for the personalized deck tech, Wade chose Brago King Eternal with a focus on Blink. Brago is a 2/4 spirit with flying that costs 2 white-blue. He has whenever Brago King Eternal deals combat damage to a player, exile any number of target non-land permanents you control, then return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control. So Brago is all about abusing ETBs. Essentially, we're going to be running a ton of non-land permanents, and each and every single one of them is going to have an ETB. So every single time that Brago connects, we get an incredible amount of value. Now, Brago is a powerful commander, and there are a ton of incredible cards that we can pick from for this deck. And because of that, I want to give myself an extra challenge for this one, so today's episode is going to be a Crushing Quarters deck. Crushing Quarters decks are built on the smallest of budgets. Outside of the commander, every single card in this deck has to be 25 cents or less. Again, Brago is a great candidate for this type of a deck because of his trigger. Even at the 25-cent mark, there are a ton of powerful ETBs that we can abuse. So the strategy for this deck is pretty straightforward. We're going to gain an incredible amount of value by abusing ETBs. The more things that we have on the field, the more value that we get every single time that we connect with Brago. And then how do we win with this deck? Well, we're going to overwhelm our opponents with an army of tokens. We've got plenty of ETBs that make multiple tokens, so we can easily flood the board. And as always, I'm going to take you through 10 different tactics that show you how this deck works and how we're going to win with it. So let's start things off with tactic number 1, Hail to the King. First up, there's Prismatic Lens, which can tap for a color so we can use it to filter our mana. And then there's Azorius Cluestone, which can tap for either white or blue, and we can pay white, blue, and tap and sacrifice it to draw a card. Azorius Locket is essentially the same, but we pay double that to draw 2. Next up, we've got some Mana Rocks with some ETBs that Brago can abuse with Mana Geode and Vessel of Endless Rest. When Mana Geode enters the battlefield, we scry 1, and it can tap to add 1 mana of any color. And then when Vessel of Endless Rest enters the battlefield, we put target card from a graveyard on the bottom of its owner's library, and it can also tap to add 1 mana of any color. Next up, we've got some Mandorks that can help us out as well with Goldmere, Sea Scryer, and Deranged Assistant. Goldmere taps for a white, and both Sea Scryer and Deranged Assistant tap for a colorless. Finally, we've got 2 Mandorks that tap for even more with Palladium Mirror and Apprentice Wizard. Palladium Mirror taps for colorless, and Apprentice Wizard essentially does the same thing. We pay a blue and tap it for colorless. These Mandorks that cost 3 and essentially tap for 2 can really help us ramp quickly. But we've got some other ways to ramp as well. So now it's time to move on to tactic number 2, Youre Treasure. First up, we've got Sailor of Means, which when it enters the battlefield, we create a treasure token. And Prosperous Pirates takes us even further by giving us 2 treasures. Now, treasures might only be temporary ramp, but these cards are fantastic in this deck because they come on ETBs. So every single time that Brago hits, we get more treasures. And that can really add up throughout the game, getting us more ETBs in play to abuse with Brago. But what are some of those other ETBs that we want to abuse, though? Let's start with some simple ones in tactic number 3, Advantageous. First up, we've got some cards that essentially all do the exact same thing with Prophetic Prism, Golden Egg, and Guild Globe. Now they have some other effects, but the thing that we care about is that they are artifacts that cost 2, and when they enter the battlefield, they draw us a card. So these artifacts are cheap, draw us 1 card to start, and can draw us an incredible amount of cards throughout the game. Again, every single time that Brago connects with one of these on the field, we draw another card. So we're also running Ichor Wellspring, Sleeper Dart, and Alchemist Vial, which each do the same thing. We've also got some enchantments that can help us out as well with Omen of the Sea, Lash Knife Barrier, and Dovin's Acuity. Omen of the Sea helps us even more. It's got Flash, and when it enters the battlefield, we scry 2, then we draw a card. Now, like some of the artifacts, we can sacrifice Omen of the Sea for value, but generally, we don't want to do that. The longer it stays in play, the more opportunity that we have to abuse it with Brago. Next up, there's Lash Knife Barrier, which when it enters the battlefield, we draw a card, and if a source would deal damage to a creature we control, it deals that much damage -1 to that creature instead. That second part is nice, but the main reason this card's in the deck is for drawing cards. And Dovin's Acuity takes things a step further by gaining us 2 life and drawing us a card. We even have an aura that can help us out as well with Sisay's Ingenuity, which just costs a blue. It's going to draw us a card when it comes into play, and we can use it to change target creature's color, which usually isn't going to help us unless it's coming in handy with our next card. When Pentarch Ward comes into play, we choose a color and draw a card, and the enchanted creature has protection from the chosen color. This effect doesn't remove Pentarch Ward, so we can use this to help protect Brago or to help get Brago through. But an enchantment that can draw us even more cards is Trial of Knowledge, which is going to draw us 3 cards and make us discard 1. This can really help us dig through our deck quickly and get to the right cards that we need. Finally, we've got some creatures that can help us out as well with Seagate Oracle, Riverwise Augur, and Cloudblazer. When Seagate Oracle enters the battlefield, we look at the top 2 cards of our library. One goes into our hand, and the other goes onto the bottom of our library. And then Riverwise Augur is essentially a brainstorm on a body. When it enters the battlefield, we draw 3, then we put 2 cards from our hand on top of our library in any order. And Cloudblazer gives us even more value, drawing us 2 cards and gaining us 2 life. Now, outside of drawing, we've got another way to generate card advantage. So let's find out what that is in tactic number 4, Manifesting Power. First up, there's Clown Form, which when it enters the battlefield, it becomes an aura with enchant creature. Manifest the top card of your library and attach Clown Form to it. That enchanted creature is going to have flying and hexproof. And then Light Form does the same thing, but the enchanted creature has flying and lifelink. Now, getting a 2/2 with flying and hexproof or flying and lifelink is great, but the key is that we're getting card advantage out of this. And it's card advantage that we can abuse with Brago. Nearly every single card in this deck is a permanent, so chances are that manifested card is something that we can flip over with Brago. We blink it, and chances are it's going to have an ETB, and we also get that ETB. And we can keep blinking either of these enchantments to get more and more manifested cards. Because of Brago's blink ability, each of these essentially gets us things into play for free. Now those things could be 1 mana or 7, but regardless, we're getting an incredible amount of value from these. Drawing cards is great, but essentially casting things for free is even better. But what other ways can we benefit from Brago's trigger? Let's find out now in tactic number 5, Massive Gains. First up, we've got Daxos, Blessed by the Sun, which says whenever the creature you control enters the battlefield or dies, you gain 1 life. Impassioned Order is similar. It says whenever the creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. And Answered Prayer is essentially an enchantment that can turn into a creature that does the same. With a number of creatures that we're going to be blinking that come into play, we can gain an incredible amount of life from all of these. These can easily pad our life total and put us way ahead of our opponents. And they can be even better thanks to the next cards we're going to be talking about. So what exactly are those cards? Let's find out now in tactic number 6, Token of Appreciation. First up, there's Eldrazi Sky Spawner, which when it enters the battlefield, we make a 1/1 Eldrazi Scion, which we can sacrifice for a colorless. And then both Illyros Enraptured and Enlightened Maniac are going to make a 3/2 when they come into play. But some even more powerful tokens come from Blade Splicer, Master Splicer, and Urbis Protector. Blade Splicer is going to make a 3/3 Golem when it comes into play, and Golems we control have first strike. And then Master Splicer also makes a 3/3 Golem, and our Golems get +1/+1. So with both of these in play, we've got 4/4 Golems with first strike. Speaking of 4/4s, we've also got Urbis Protector, which is going to make a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying. But we've got ways to make even more tokens with things like Omen of the Sun, Aquatic Incursion, and Whirler Rogue. When Omen of the Sun enters the battlefield, we create 2 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens, and we gain 2 life. And then Aquatic Incursion is going to create 2 1/1 blue merfolk tokens with hexproof. And Whirler Rogue gives us 2 1/1 Thopters with flying. Next up, there's Experimental Aviator, which does the same. And then Drowner of Hope is going to give us 2 1/1 Eldrazi Scions, which we can sacrifice for mana. Cloud Goat Ranger takes a step further by giving us 3 1/1 white Kithkin soldiers. And finally, our biggest token ETBs come with Mirror Battlesphere, Reverent Hoplite, and Evangel of Heliod. Mirror Battlesphere is going to make 4 1/1 colorless Mirror. And then Reverent Hoplite and Evangel of Heliod are each going to make us a number of 1/1 soldiers equal to our devotion to white. With all of our token ETBs that we can abuse with Brago, we can create an entire army in no time. But now that we've been talking about our plans, how do we throw a wrench into our opponent's plans? Let's go through some ways now in tactic number 7, Counterplay. First up, there's Negate, which is going to let us counter target non-creature spell. And then Dissipate can counter any spell, and if that spell is countered this way, we exile it. Finally, there's Dissolve, which says counter target spell, scry 1. Outside of countering spells, though, we've got some other ways to deal with our opponent's things. So now let's move on to tactic number 8, Get Out of Here. First up, there's Exclusion Mage, which when it enters the battlefield, we bounce target creature an opponent controls. And then Aether Adept and Mana War can bounce any creature, including our own. Next up, there's Ripwing Cloudscape, which can bounce any permanent back to its owner's hand. And then when War Priest of Throne enters the battlefield, we can destroy target enchantment. Speaking of destruction, next up is Meteor Golem, which when it enters the battlefield, we can destroy target non-land permanent and opponent controls. And we've also got some exile effects with Phyrexian Ingester and Exclusion Ritual. Phyrexian Ingester has Imprint. When it enters the battlefield, we can exile target non-token creature. And then Phyrexian Ingester gets +X/+Y, where X is the exiled creature card's power and Y is its toughness. And Exclusion Ritual has Imprint. When it enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent. And players can't cast spells with the same name as the exiled card. By abusing all these ETBs, we can really control the board and set our opponents back. But we've still got some valuable ETBs to talk about. So let's go through them now in tactic number 9, Value Town. First up, there's Jeering Homunculus, which when it enters the battlefield, we can go target creature. So that means it's going to be forced to attack and it can't attack us. And then when Azorius Justicar enters the battlefield, we detain up to 2 target creature our opponents control. So until our next turn, those creatures can't attack or block and their activated abilities can't be activated. So we can essentially shut down 2 creatures as long as this is in play and we can keep linking it. Next up, there's Forbidding Spirit, which when it enters the battlefield until our next turn, creatures can't attack us or a planeswalker we control unless their controller pays 2 for each of those creatures. So this is essentially a Ghostly Prism but on a body. And finally, there's Glimmerpoint Stag, which when it enters the battlefield, we can exile another target permanent and return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So this can help us pick and choose another ETB to abuse. And speaking of that, we've still got 1 card left to talk about. So now let's move on to tactic number 10, In a Bind. And this final card that we're going to be talking about is actually the golden pick of this deck, which is the number 1 card out of our 99. And the golden pick for this deck is Skybind. It's an enchantment for 3 white, and it has Constellation. Whenever a Skybind or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, exile target non-enchantment permanent. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. We're running a decent amount of enchantments in this deck, and this gives us even more ways to abuse ETBs. Whenever we cast an enchantment or blink an enchantment, we can blink something. Throughout the game, this can help us fully utilize ETBs and give us an absurd amount of value, and that's why it's the golden pig. Again, a huge thanks to Wade for picking Brago. I had a blast building this deck. But now it's time to talk about how our deck stacks up when it comes to cost, so let's move on to the price breakdown. The average Brago EDH rec deck is going to set you back $249.82. Our deck is going to be much more affordable, coming in at just $17.19. But with all that money that you're going to be saving, let's take a look at some reasonable upgrades. First up, let's add in Peregrine Drake by taking out Jeering Homunculus. Next up, let's add in Youre Sky Nomad by taking out Azorius Justicar. And then let's put in Eerie Interlude by taking out Seagate Oracle. Next up, let's add in Swiftfoot Boots by taking out Eldrazi Sky Spawner. And then let's add in Agent of Treachery by taking out Enlightened Maniac. Finally, let's add in Lightning Greaves by taking out War Priest of Thune. And with that, this show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this deck tech are. What'd you like and what would you change? So yeah, let me know in the comments below. And as always, thanks again and have a good one.